Will the protagonist defeat the evil mother? What will be the outcome of the war? Where will the fate of the protagonist and her mate lead? Dive into a world of werewolves and witches. Subscribe now. Chapter 26: The Order. For council members, King Caden, Nadine, Reed and I journeyed to the Nadine's coven just at the break of dawn. The coven was just as I remembered, gloomy and almost lifeless. Its grounds was just as large as the Werewolf Palace grounds, only it lacked the vibrancy and charms the Werewolf King Palace possessed. I remember the last time I came here. It was over 2 centuries ago when Nadine had tried to initiate me into the coven for the nth time, but once again the coven did not accept me. They were clear on where I stood in their world. I was strange and I was different. They did not like that and did not need that. I never thought there would be a day. A werewolf king will stand before us. It was Nadine, mother. Celine that spoke. She was the head of the coven and a high-ranking member of the order. Your ancestors were clear on how they felt about our kind. What do you seek here, King Caden? Nadine rolled her eyes at her mother's antics. They were never close, but they were family, so they did well to tolerate each other, at least most of the times. We stood in their council room. The members of the order were 6 present. 3 females and 3 males adorned in red long robes. They were all seated on throne chairs with a stoic expression on their faces. They really appeared to not be pleased with our visit. I would not be here if the matters at hand was not of grave importance and it did not affect your kind as well, Caden stated boldly. He might need their help, but in no way was he willing to bow down to anyone. Are you certain that this matter affects us, young king? Celine raised an eyebrow, causing Nadine to roll her eyes once more before she said, Of course it affects us as well. We have lost control of the other world. The world where my father was imprisoned and as well as others from our kind. You have left it at the mercy of a newly turned witch while you sat in your thrones acting all high and mighty. Nadine was the one to respond before Caden could. A deep frown immediately settled on Celine's face, showing her displeasure of her daughter's choice of words. Ingrid might have a good reason for her quest. The werewolves did kill her true love and banished her out to fend for herself and child alone. In my opinion, her reasons are justified. Althea here is acting like an ungrateful child. Your mother is fighting for your father's honor. You should be proud. She shot out. How can it be justified if the ones that supposedly caused have long passed on mother? But it will please me to inform you that Lady Ingrid lied. You have all been fooled. Nadine shot back. Celine's eyes narrowed at her daughter for a second or two before she shared a strange look with the rest of the members of the order seated. And we are to believe this is true. What could possibly be BER then for trying to take the werewolf kingdom? She asked. Purely greed. And I am certain that she would not stop when she succeeds in taking over the werewolf world, and she will come for your coven as well. My mother intends to rule all. This is far bigger than revenge because there is no revenge if she is the one that actually killed my father, I boldly responded. Lies. Celine banged her fist against the arm of her throne chair. Is it, mother? Or do you choose to not see the truth right in front of you? The order thinks they know everything, but they don't. If Ingrid was just after the werewolf community, she should have just gone straight for them. Why did she have to take over the other world? Nadine explains. I will show you, I stated. Nadine and her mother were like fire and ice. The least thing we want now was to turn everything into quarrel. I walked up to her and stretched out her hands for her. She contemplated for a second, but she takes my hands into hers. She chants some spells and then I feel her mind get sucked into my own mind. After some minutes she pulls out. She glanced at Reed and I realized that she had seen that as well. Your goddess favored you at last, she said in a whisper. She turns to her comrades as I stepped away from her. She speaks the truth. Ingrid is a deceiver, she said audibly. We should inform the Black Coven at once of this deceit. One of the male member of the order spoke out. Sadly, we cannot. It is too late. It would not matter now, Celine answered, and why is that? Caden asked, his tone a slightly demanding, causing Celine to sneer a bit as they shared a heated gaze. Sanguis vinculum sorab, she responded, and my eyes widens alongside Nadine's. What does that mean? One of the councilmen named Sanders was the one to ask. blood bond of sisters, I whispered, but I am certain that they all heard me. It is an old ritual. Most coven do not participate in it, that kind of ritual anymore. It ties the souls of witches bounded by a quest. They would not be able to back out until the quest is complete. I finally understand why Lady Ingrid sought out the Black Coven for help. She must have done her research and found out that they take part in the old ways. She knew they are driven by revenge and would perform that ritual to solidify the plan, Nadine explained. How do you know that this is true, Lady Celine? I asked. Perhaps she might be mistaken. I have a sister in the Black Coven, Althea. She was the one to inform me of the ritual they had done. They are really keen on destroying the werewolf community. And even if they find out the truth now, there is nothing that can be done whether they like it or all. All that took part in the ritual would be compelled to go through with the quest. This ritual can only be broken when the quest is complete or when the instigator of the ritual dies, and that is Lady Ingrid, Celine explained. Then all we have to do is to kill Ingrid. That is why we want you to join us to help us fight, Cadence stated. You expect us to fight our sisters, dear King. It would be difficult to defeat Ingrid now that she has the backing of witches. It is not so easy to kill a witch. We have the dagger, I announced, and the members of the Order eyes open. What dagger? Celine eyes narrowed at me. There have not been any dagger for centuries. They had all been destroyed a long time ago. You are wrong, Lady Celine. I have one in my possession, and I am willing to prove its potency if anyone is willing to volunteer, I said as I pulled out the dagger from my cross bag. The members of the Order gasped, and they are shared a confused look amongst each other. How did you come to have that in your possession? Celine asks. It was still evident that the revelation of the dagger had completely thrown her off the balance. Not everyone seeks immortality, Lady Celine. Some of us see it as a curse. It does not matter how it got into my possession. What matters is that it exists, and I have it, I replied. It should not exist, she spat out. It does exist, Celine, and I feel that they might be more of this dagger somewhere. Our existence is the tipping the balance of nature. No one is meant to live forever. Are you saying we should cease to exist? We are not to blame for the errors of our ancestors, Celine frowned. But it is in our hands to shape the present and the future. If you decide to sit out of this fight, the werewolf community will be destroyed and my mother would come for your own world next, I stated boldly. Celine burst out into a fit of laughter. Your mother cannot come after our world next. The Black Coven would never have agreed to that ritual if it meant that they would fall under your mother's control. Young one, your mother only seeks to conquer the werewolf world, and I do not see a problem in that. Maybe it would even improve the way of life of the werewolves. Caden lets out a loud growl, but the members of the Order say unshaken. Are you trying to fight me in my own house? Celine asks dryly. Mark Spidey, my fated mate. Lights flashed around me and my wounds spun with the beat of the heavy techno music the DJ was playing. Nadine warned you would let father fall under the control of that woman. My darling child, the Order will definitely find a way to reclaim that world from Ingrid's hand. This fight simply does not concern us, Celine responded. Your kind is waging war against my kind, out of foolish. Caden gritted in between his teeth. Celine glared at him hard for a second or two before she turned her face towards my direction. Perhaps we are willing to join his fight if you vow to give us the dagger after you have used it on your mother, she suggested. I looked over at Caden for an answer. He nodded in agreement. I breathed out, and a wide smile adorned Celine's face. Chapter 27, Take Over. We journeyed back to the palace as soon as we had come to a compromise with the Order. The palace was in complete disarray, with warriors running from one corner to the other. The panic filled the air even though they acted so orderly. It was clear that none of these people wanted war. War was never good, and it was definitely nothing to look forward to. Times were different now. During the early days, I had watched men seek war for glory of some sort. It had led to countless destruction. A painful sight I wished not be ever behold, but it was here standing by our doorsteps. How do you intend to get your mother's attention? Nadine asked when we were settled in the four corners of my room. Ree was also present as well. He had not spoken a word of his he felt about the whole thing, but I knew that he felt like he did not need to. All he wanted to do was to stand by my side. I wondered how I would have felt if he had been the one that had been abducted by my mother. How I would feel was confusing, but I knew exactly what I would have done. I would have followed in the steps of Fia. I intend to use Fia, I answered. She is me, like take control of her body. She asked. I nodded in response. It is not an easy magic, she pointed out. I pulled out a piece of paper from my cross bag. If I use letter, I know, but it is the only way. You know, this will only work if she accepts for you to take control of her body. Fia is extremely protective of you. I feel she will be trying her best to keep your mother away from you. I know, but she does not need to. My mother's will do not appear to be getting swayed any time soon. I walked over to the drawers and pulled out candles from it. I made a small circle with the candles before placing Fia's letters in the center. It would be my connection to her, and then I lit the candles with my powers. I closed my eyes and chant a few spells. I feel the ground below me vibrate a little, and then I feel the shift in the air. I open my eyes and I am in a room. An antique room. Fia was by the bed holding the hand of a young man. This was her mate. There were tears in her eyes. The young man had bruises on his face and he was lying conscious. Fia's face was covered in tears and it broke me. She was in pain. I held her by the shoulder and it was then she felt my presence. Her body jerks up as she turned to her side. Mistress, how are you here? She asked as she jumped off from the stool that she was sitting. Sure, I said in a whisper, and she nodded her head in understanding, a little too hard that I would have wanted her to. I glanced over at her mate and back at her. Her eyes followed my eyes. He looks handsome. He looks guy complimented. Thank you, mistress, she sniffled, wiping her face. I am 2 years older than him, she added. I chuckled, trying to lighten the air. We are sisters after all. Younger men seem to take a likeness to us. Sister, she mumbled. I held her by the hand. I am sorry that you had to be born by an evil as a woman, but it gladdens my heart to know that you are my sister. My own flesh and blood. You were always like a daughter to me, Fia, and I have truly been blessed having you by my side all these years. I am glad as well, mistress, she responded softly. We are sisters, Fia. You addressing me as mistress would have to stop now. Okay, she muttered, nodded her head. Do you know where you're, Fia? I asked. No, I do not. The witches that brought me here blinded my eyes to keep me from seeing anything. Okay, it is fine, I responded. I am coming to get you, Fia. But I need your help. It is the only way to win the war that is coming, I added. What do you need for me to do, me sister, she stuttered. I smiled warmly at her for the title she had just addressed me with. I need to find out about where you are, and I need to take control of your body. Do I have your permission? Absolutely. I will do anything for you. What will happen to me while you take control? She glanced over at her mate. She was worried for his well-being. You will be there, but I will be in the forefront. Do not worry, Fia. I will protect him while I complete my duty, I assured. Okay, what do I need to do? She asks. I stretched out my hands. Place your hands on my knee, instructed, and she immediately compiled, and then I enter her body. I immediately feel dizzy and I almost stumbled to the floor, but I was quick enough to regain my stamina and hold myself. I sat on the stool when a knock immediately came to the door. A dark-skinned girl dressed in a white dress entered the room. Her face was completely emotions. From her aura, I could tell that she was a witch. You, mother, seeks your presence at the dining table. I will do well to accompany you there. I got up from the stool and nodded. She turned her back and she walks out of the room while I walked behind her. We walked down the hallways, which felt incredibly long. I was trying to use my power to know where we were, but it was not working. I have not fully gotten used to Fia's body, but there was little time on our hands. Where exactly are we? I asked, but I got nothing in response. Your comrades did not do well to inform me when they took me out of the palace, I added, but still I got no response from her. She continued walking, acting like I had not even uttered a single word. Can you hear me? I asked too loudly, and she stopped abruptly and turned to face me. You are quite chatty this evening. I see you do not have any more tears to let out today, young one, she stated with a stoic expression on her face. I immediately became silent. Her words broke me a bit. Thea has been crying for that long. There you are, back to your usual self, she added as she turned her back and continued walking. I did not utter another word after that, and I just followed her by the tailor. It is good you can finally join us, my dear child. How is Tyler? I hope he is resting well. She asked excitedly as I entered the dining hall. I will send some people over to make sure he is getting the proper care. Now come, my child, she gestured with her hands as though she wanted me to come into her embrace. I watched her carefully. She was acting like a real mother that was truly concerned for her child's well-being. I walked up to her and she pulls out a chair by her right-hand side and I take my seat. She stuns me when she then proceeds to serve me the food. I watched her intensely, trying to figure out what she was actually doing. But I couldn't. She had the brightest smile on her face that a stranger would not even suspect that she had evil intentions behind the beauty of her facial features. You treat her like a child, a witch with bright red hair seated her my mother's left-hand side spat in disgust. Well, she's my child. I have not had the opportunity to do these things with her since she was still young at age, my mother demanded. She handed me the dished plate of food and sat down on her seat. Oh well, have your fun then. Your eldest child refuses to join us. She sides with the wolves rather than defending her father's honor, the same which responded. She is still quite foolish, Esther. I am sure she will come to her senses soon. Those words rolled out of my mother's tongue so easily. The lies were like a second nature to her, and thirst witches have been blinded by her lies. How fast is this in you speak of Ingrid when we plan to attack them tomorrow? Esther asked dryly. My eyes widens in shock. Tomorrow. They were planning to attack us tomorrow. You cannot do that. I banged my hands on the table out of impulse. My mother stared at me intensely. I have foolishly given myself out. She immediately grabbed me by my right hand. She sucked in her breath and closed her eyes. When she opened them back, she breathed, Althea. I immediately pulled my hand away from her. She bursts out into a fit of laughter. You are smarter than I thought, Althea, she said with a smile when she ended her crazy laughter, but you are not stronger. Her face immediately turned into a frown. And she began to choke me with her powers. I struggled, pulling at my neck out. She screamed at the top of her voice, and immediately, my spirit jumps out of Thea's body. Be prepared, Althea. We are coming, she said. Thea was already back in control of her body. She stares at me completely frightened. I stared back at her in despair, and then I heard that deafening crack and her body dropped to the ground lifeless. Her eyes rolled to the back. No. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I feel my spirit being pulled away from the dining halls until I am back in my body. I open my eyes. Thea is dead. I cried. She is coming. Chapter 28, Final Confrontation 1. Thea was gone. Thea was gone. Those words chanting in my head like a broken, painful record. Nadine was holding me still. I felt numb and utterly defeated. My mind was frozen and my body had followed suit. Reed's face read devastation. Tears rolled down his cheeks effortlessly while I struggled to process the reality before me. Images of Thea ran through my mind all at once, hitting me like a slap on my face. I have failed. I have lost the war before it even began. I had whimpers in my ears, and it takes a while for me to realize that I was the one making those sounds. Then the tears started and began falling freely from my eyes. Althea, I am so sorry, Nadine cooed. But it is not. My words comes out in cracks. I was choking on my tears, but I did not want to stop. I deserve this. I have failed to protect one of the person that mattered to me most. I had failed my sister. I killed her. This is all my fault. I made my mother kill her. I cried violently. My body shaking. This is not your fault, Althea. This is not your fault. Nadine tries to reason with me, but this was greater than just mere reasoning. How is this not my fault? I asked bitterly. I know that it is wrong for me to be putting my anger on her, but I could not help myself. Nadine's eyes filled with sorrow as she struggled to find the right words to console me. She took a deep breath. Her voice filled with empathy. Althea, I understand your pain and guilt, but you must listen to me. You did not make your mother kill Thea. It was her choice, her decision. Your mother is consumed by darkness. She killed her own child because of her greed. Nadine's words pierced through the fog of my despair, and I looked at her, searching for answers in her eyes. But I couldn't save her. I whispered, my voice broken. I couldn't save my own sister. Nadine's grip on my shoulders tightened, her voice filled with determination. You may not have been able to save Thea, but that doesn't mean you failed. You loved Thea and Thea loved you back. That matters. Althea. You can't blame yourself for what your mother did. She made her own choices, and she will have to face the consequences. We will defeat her. We will avenge FIA's death. I do not want vengeance. I want her back. She is a mate. He is young. How would he move in from this? How will I face him after what I have done? If I did not take possession of her body, she would not have killed her. My mother dished a plate of food for her like a loving mother would. She stared at her with joy in her eyes that for a minute I contemplated the evil that was in her heart. But I foolishly blew my cover. I infuriated her and it cost me FIA's life. I cried. Nadine's facial expression dropped into sadness once more. She looked at Reed for help, but Reed looked defeated as well. He walked up to me and picked me up from the floor to the bed. I have no words to say that will comfort you, Althea. And it hurts me to watch you go through this much pain. I hear, Althea. I want you to know that I am here. You can let go. You can cry. You can hit me. I am here, he breathed. I watched him intensely as his words pierced my heart. I pulled his body into mine, and he immediately engulfed me in a hug. I am here, he cooed softly while stroking my hair. It did not take away the pain. I do not think that anything will take away the pain. But it made me feel like I was not completely alone. Nadine gave me a soft smile and a slight nod accompanying it. I could not sleep that night. I tossed and tossed in the bed while my mind relieved FIA's death over and over again. Reed was awake as well. He could not sleep as well and was doing his best to comfort me. I would toss and then cry. It was a never-ending battle, and when it became the break of dawn, I got up immediately and Reed did as well. My face was drained of its color when I stared at myself in the mirror. I look lifeless, but I cannot afford to be lifeless now. War was on our doorstep and I needed to fight. I needed to stop my mother before she succeeds in reaping out the rest of the people I care for. I immediately cleaned myself and got dressed in trousers, and by the time I was out, Reed was standing there all dressed up as well. The warriors are assembling at the ground outside the palace gate. We will wait for your mother there, he said. I nodded and we both walked out of the room. Nadine was waiting for us outside the room and she pat me on the shoulders and we all left the hallways. The wolves were already assembled in the grounds by the time we got there. King Caden was at the front of the warrior like a leader should. His bae James was by his side. He spots me and I walked up to him alongside Reed and Nadine. I heard about what happened, priestess. I am sorry for your loss, he greeted with a sad expression on his face. Thank you, my king. Thea will continue to live on in me. The past cannot be changed, but the future is right in our hands, I responded. He nodded in agreement. It was then the witches from Nadine's coven appeared. They looked more like witnesses rather than fighters, but I knew they were here for the fight. A deal has been made. There has not been a battle like this in centuries. It is almost intriguing, Celine commented when she finally made her way to us. The rest of the witches mingled with the werewolves, but they kept to themselves. Nadine glared hardly at her mother. There is nothing intriguing about war, mother. Your excitement makes you seem vile. Perhaps it does, but I came. My people came. They are willing to fight by your side, Celine frowns at her daughter. I thank you for coming. It was Caden that spoke up this time. Fighting by our side at a price, Nadine muttered under her breath, but the ones close to her heard it. Nothing is free in this world, my dear. This world is not a fantasy, Celine fired. Our existence is a fantasy to the humans. If you haven't heard, there is something called the compassion of the heart. But I suppose yours withered off centuries ago, Nadine fired back. A scowl settled on Celine's face. It was obvious that she was not pleased with her daughter publicly attacking her, and I was not pleased as well. Now was not the time to argue amongst each other like we were enemies when the true enemy was yet to come. Enough. I yelled, your argument does not know good. Thank you for coming, Celine. Keep your end of the bargain, and I will do well to keep my eye at it as I pulled out the dagger girdle, and my waist belt holding it tightly in my grasp. Of course, Celine responded swiftly, eyeing the dagger in my hand. But she did not utter a single word after that. Nadine snorted, but she also kept quiet. Silence engulfed the grounds as we all waited in anticipation for my mother's arrival. My heart was beating incredibly fast against my chest, but I was trying to keep a stiff composure. I have never felt this much fear in my entire existence. Thea was gone, and it saddened me that some of lives on these fields would be lost today. They would never get to go home and met their families one more time. It broke my heart tremendously. War was never an option. And then the ground began to shake violently. The sound of running wolves filled the bushes in fringe of us, and then I saw her with the brightest smile on her face, void of any remorse for the death of my sister, her own child, her own flesh and blood. She was dressed as though she was getting ready for a coronation ceremony. She was so confident that she will win this war. I will not let that happen. Even if it cost me my life, we would go together. I have been received warmly, she said, strong as her army of witches and plagued wolves settled behind her. The war is now. Chapter 29, Final Confrontation. I have been received warmly, she said with a sinister smile on her face as her army assembled behind her. You do not have to do this, Mother. Surrender and let this war end now. I warned boldly from across the field where I stood. I think it is too late for that now, my dear. I murdered your sister, but you are so willing to give me forgiveness. Quite pathetic, don't you seem, she said. Her eyes were filled with malice and her smile dripping with arrogance. The gravity of the situation settled heavily upon my shoulders. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of years of darkness and pain, and I knew that the outcome of this battle would determine the fate of every single one of us standing there. Dear King, these are your people that have been turned into such monstrosity. Are you perhaps willing to give me forgiveness? Do the blood of your people mean so little to you? She gestures at the plagued wolves growling by her side. She was trying to infuriate Caden, and she was slowly succeeding. Caden fist tightens. He was struggling to keep himself under control. Forgiveness is not on my books, Caden gritted. My mother's smiles widens. I really like you, dear King. You are not blinded by those sentimental things. My fellow sisters, this woman has deceived you, Celine spoke up to the witches gathered behind my mother. It is you that has been deceived. Esther was the one to respond to you. Fight alongside the smuts. You are willing to betray your sisters and cut them down. You have always been a bit slow, Esther. That is why you are so easily manipulated, Celine responded. A scowl settled on Esther's face while Nadine smirked. It was evident that she was proud of her mother's response. Celine waved her hands to the air, and she shows them my memory like a movie. The witches behind my mother are completely thrown off balance when they discover the real truth. You deceived us, Ingrid, Esther said with a scowl. You are quite easy to play for a fool, Esther. Your coven is driven by vengeance. There is something about it that fuels your souls, and I took that as an opportunity, my mother said with a smirk. It is a shame, really, that you had to find out now. But you see, I knew the truth will come out this day. That is why I made us perform the blood bond of sisters. You will do my bidding until I succeed in ripping out the head off their king. She yells maniacally, and her eyes turn completely black. Enough of the chit-chat and let us begin. Just with that, the plagued wolves, acting on compulsion, dashed across the field towards us. Even the witches as well. They really were acting under her bidding. Attack! Caden screamed, and the warrior screamed in return and began running towards the plagued wolves as well. The witches alongside Celine followed suit, attacking the witches from my mother's side. The battle was fierce, and I watched the bodies of plagued wolves and werewolf warriors drop easily. A frown settled on my face. There was no going back now. I have to fight for the good people and for Fia memory. I charged onward to my mother. She had a smirk on her face as I ran towards her. It is incredibly beautiful for us to be fighting each other, daughter. This will go down in history. I will remember to carry on your memory when you leave this world, she said, and it completely infuriated me. I waved my hand in the air using my magic to lift her off the ground and throw her away, but she landed majestically. You will have to do better than that, child, she spat as she used her magic to pull me towards her and in a quick move smashed me against the ground. I groaned out in pain as she continues hitting my back against the ground. Thea, no. Reed yells and I watched him run towards me in an attempt to save me. Oh, the dear old maid is coming to your rescue. Should I do you the honor of letting you watch him right in your face? She says and used her magic to drag Reed towards her, choking him completely. He struggles against her hold while trying to shift at the same time. She still held me to the ground and I was struggling to fight against her power. She was truly strong. I watched as the colors start to drain from Reed's face and it completely broke my heart. Reed, no. I screamed and I felt this incredible power inside of me surging forward. It was as if every ounce of pain, anger, and determination I had ever felt was channeling into a single moment. With a primal scream, I unleashed a burst of raw energy, breaking free from my mother's grip and sending her flying backward. She landed with a loud thud on the ground and she coughs out blood. I rushed over to Reed and help him off the ground shift. I commanded, "Help the others. I can handle her alone," I added. He hesitates a bit, but he nods his head and shifts into his wolf form and dashed into the heated battle taking place around us. My mother gets up from the ground, so you do have the strength in you. I must admit I am indeed proud. If only Fia had a bit of your strength, maybe she would be alive right this moment. Shut your mouth. I warned, how dare you speak of Fia in such manner? How dare a mother kill her own child? I spat out in disgust. She chuckles. Fia was completely pathetic. I should not have left her in your care. You raised her to be weak. Shut up. I screamed as I flew across the ground, landing a punch on her face. She stumbles backwards once again. You are a disgusting human being. It hurts me in my soul to be related to you by blood. Really? She said, bursting out into a maniacal laughter, catching me off guard. It was then she takes the opportunity to use her magic to bind me in the air. I struggled to break free, but I couldn't. I feel my essence getting sucked from me. You have no use of your powers, my child. I will help you take good care of it. No, you will not. Nadine yelled, using her magic to send her flying, and once again she landed with a loud thud on the ground and I break fire from her magic. Nadine catches me before I could hit the ground. At your head in the game, Althea. The wolves cannot the plagued wolves for much longer. They are stronger and faster. And this now. I nodded. I caught my breath as I used my magic to lift my mother of the ground, trying to bind her just as she did me, but she stops me. I will not go down so easily. You cannot kill me, she yells. But I smirked as I pulled out the dagger from my belt. Her eyes widened. So you know that this is. How did you get that? She asks. For the first time, I am able to see fear in her eyes. It does not matter, but it is what will bring you your doom, never. She screams, charging at me, knocking me off the ground. The dagger fell from my grasp and she immediately picks it up. In a swift move, she plunged the dagger into my stomach and everything stood still. No. I heard Reed and Nadine scream in deafening voices as I fell to the ground. My mother burst out into a fit of laughter. She crouched Ed down to my level. You should have tried a lot better, my dear child. You fought well. I will cherish this memory with me, she said as I coughed out blood. It was over. I had lost. I wanted for what was next. I should be fading by now. I turned my head towards Reed. He was on the ground looking completely defeated. Tears streaming down his eyes, and it was then a lying tear slipped from my eyes. I am sorry. I love you, I managed to utter. My mother brings her face closer to mine and kisses the tears on my cheeks. My lips lingering on my face. My time was now, but I did not feel myself fading. I should be fading. That was what the dagger was meant to do. Maybe this is my chance. Maybe the universe was giving me a chance to save everyone, even if my life was now over. I carefully pulled out the dagger from my stomach. I love you, mother, I said, and it completely threw her off balance. I felt her stiffen and she lifts up her body, and I take the opportunity to plunge the knife into her chest. She wailed immediately in pain, stumbling away from me. And then it happens. Her body began to turn black. She coughs out blood, only it was also in a black color. What have you done? No, she struggled to compose those words out of her mouth. I am plunging this world from you, I spat out. Her face contorted into a frown, and then her body begins to scatter in simple pieces and she fades away. I turn my attention back to Reed. He got up from the ground and made his way towards me. From behind him I could see the plagued wolves fall to the ground. Their master was dead, so they would die with their master. They were the sacrifice of the sick game, just like Thea. Althea, please, Reed begs as he lifts my body, cradling me against his chest. Don't leave me. He cries. He places a kiss on my lips. I meant it when I said that I loved you. I love you, Reed, I said. I love you, he responded back. I smiled. Any moment from now, I will fade just like my mother did. I think hers was faster because I had stabbed her in her chest directly into her heart. Althea, no. Nadine cries. It is okay, Nadine. It is all over now. We won, I said. How can we have won when we are losing you? Nadine asks as tears stream down her eyes more violently. I agree, a familiar voice said, and it completely stunned me. I never expect to hear that voice. Was this a dream? Was I hallucinating because my end was near? My sister, the voice said, and then Thea appears before me. She placed a chaste kiss on my cheeks, and it was then that I realized that it was real. She was real. Thea was alive. You are alive, I coughed. Yes, I am. It was all a part of her game to weaken your spirit. I live, Althea, and so does my mate. She bounded us with magic in the forest. The spell broke when you succeeded, mistress, she explained. A bright smile settled on my face. At least she did one good thing in her lifetime. I do not think she is going to fade away. It was Celine that said, my eyes widened. You should have by now. The dagger does not work on you anymore. Your soul has been bound to that of your mate. You are dying, but you are die. A wolf would die. That dagger was fatal to you still. Can we do something to help her then? Reed asks eagerly. He was holding up to hope that I might live, and it made me want to live too. My vision began to darken, and before I succumbed to the darkness, I hear Celine's voice like a whisper. I will try my best. The end. Chapter 30, Epilogue. 3 days later. Reed carefully placed me on the chair. I mouth a thank you. He nods in acknowledgement and he proceeds to sit beside me. I was still in pain, but I was better. After I had blacked out, Reed informed me that it took Celine and Nadine powers to be able to revive me back. And now I was still healing. Caden was talking to his people while I watched. We're holding a ceremony to honor the fallen werewolf warriors and the werewolves that had been manipulated into plagued wolves. They were still his people. The atmosphere was gloomy. The pain of the loss of their loved ones filled the atmosphere. There were sons and daughters and mates that would never been seen again. We might have won the war, but we paid a price for it. I squirmed in my chair. I was not comfortable, but I wanted to be here. I wanted to somehow share in their pain, even though I could not take it away from them. Are you sure you are okay? I can take you back to the room, he suggested with a worrisome look. He was acting on the edge when it came to me, following my every moment like he was afraid that I was going to slip away from his grasp. It did not sit well with him that I was no longer immortal, but he was grateful at the same time. The dagger would not be able to make me fade away. For me, it was a blessing. Immortality was indeed a curse, and I was grateful that I would finally get to age properly and in time leave this world. It was way better than me having to watch Reed pass on while I would be stuck here. I am fine, I gave a soft smile, but he looked at me unconvinced by my response, and I took his hand in mine, enclosing it with the other. Reed, I want to be here, I added. His shoulders dropped a bit. Fine, he mutters after sparing me a long glance. He turned his head back to the front where Caden was still commemorating on the fallen members of his people. I rested my head on his shoulders and sighed. After Caden's speech, the mass burial proceeded. There was a huge plaque mounted in front of the open graves, and family members of the deceased came one by one to say their final goodbye. I knew none of these people, but I knew their sacrifice. They died for their brothers and their sisters. They diligently and proudly fought for their king. I blew a kiss to the air. I know the moon goddess has accepted their souls. 2 months later. Caden and Louisiana welcomed their son a week ago. They named him Astral. It brought forth a reason to celebrate, though the pain in our hearts for the fallen members of several packs were still fresh in the heart. Astral birth brought a sense of hope to them, a picture of a new dawn. Caden had suggested I stayed in the palace with Reed, Thea, and Nadine. He suggested it was time I lived a life as a part of a pack. I contemplated at first, but I agreed. Reed had willing left his kind to follow me, and Thea would still diligently follow me until now, dragging her mate along with her, but this time it did not seem right. I finally understood that we needed balance, and staying might bring us some balance. But Nadine could not stay. She had to go back. She has decided to pursue her human love interest, and she wants to be able to check on the coven since they now had the dagger in their possession. I could not hold her back. She deserved her own happiness, so I let her go, not before making her promise that she would visit sometime. I was getting dressed for a picnic with Reed. I had been the one that orchestrated the whole thing this time around, surprisingly. But Thea helped a lot. I was really going to give this thing a go. Reed and I might have accepted being mates, but I knew that I was a bit old-fashioned. People of these times do these things, and Reed has been trying to get me to enjoy them and see them as a normal thing. He said, it was all about creating memories, and now I want to start creating good memories also with Reed. As I put on a casual yet elegant dress, I couldn't help but feel a mix of nervousness and excitement. Reed had been patient and understanding throughout this whole journey, and I wanted to show him that I was ready to fully embrace our relationship. As I walked out of my room, I found Reed waiting for me in the hallway, a smile lighting up his face. He was dressed in a simple outfit, his blonde hair falling slightly over his forehead. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. I blushed and thanked him, feeling a warmth spread through me. We made our way to the palace gardens, where Thea had set up a picturesque picnic spot under a large oak tree. The sun was shining brightly, casting a warm golden glow over everything. It was a perfect day for a picnic. Reed and I settled down on a blanket, surrounded by an array of delicious food and drinks. We laughed and talked, sharing stories and dreams. It felt so natural, so right, to be in his company. As we enjoyed the food in each other's presence, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had come. From the fateful night we first met, to the battles we fought together, to this moment of peace and happiness, it had been an incredible journey. I'm grateful for you, Reed, I said softly, looking into his eyes. You've stood by my side through everything, and I've come to realize that I can't imagine my life without you. His gaze was filled with warmth and affection. And I can't imagine my life without you either. I love you always, he replied, his voice filled with sincerity. I love you always, I responded back. We leaned in closer, our lips meeting in a gentle kiss. It was a sweet and tender moment, filled with the promise of a future together. As we pulled away, I looked around at the blooming flowers, the vibrant colors, and the beauty of the world around us. I knew that challenges might still come our way, but with Reed by my side, I felt strong and ready to face anything. I took his hand in mine and placed it on my flat belly. I am with child, I smiled widely. He blinked, completely stunned at my announcement. Are you sure? I cannot smell him or her yet, it is still young. You will soon, but I am absolutely sure. His lips widens into a smile. He takes me off guard when he picks me up and spins me in the air. Thank you, he said as he placed a kiss on my lips. He carefully placed me on the ground. I smiled. Thank you, I said as well, and I pulled my body into mine, feeling the warmth of his embrace. Stay tuned for more Werewolf Witch adventures. Subscribe.